NT8's view from the porch. Today we're going to talk about the two New York cops that got killed, assassinated. Everybody right now is trying to point the finger of blame, other than at the shooter. Okay, I'm fine with that. So I'm going to point the finger. And I'm going to point the finger at three people. What's going on, bro? Number one, I'm going to point the finger at Mayor Mikey de Blasio, because he endorsed the friggin' protests in New York. And then on to bigger and better, Eric Holder, who, let's see, we had Trayvon Martin, that they opened a civil rights investigation on, the DOJ. Never have seen a report on that. Michael Brown, you know, down in Ferguson, Missouri. Where's the DOJ investigation on that? They haven't come out with an answer yet. Now he opened up another one on I Can't Breathe. And just to exemplify my points, I'm going to load some videos into this, and it's going to be long, but I want you to check them out. They're all three from Fox News, because CNN will not tackle it head on like Fox does. Doesn't really matter. And then the next one is Obama, because he's a race-baiting fool. And now he's called in Al Sharpton to try and help him out. Al Sharpton, the tax evader that owes $4 million in back taxes, but yet he gets invited to the White House. Are you serious? I don't know. I'm glad the dude killed himself, because that saved the taxpayers all kinds of money. And the big thing is, I'm not sure that New York even has a death penalty, so he got his just desserts for killing two cops that neither one were white. One was Asian, and the other one was Hispanic. So why did he shoot those two? Oh, he shot them for the uniform. Oh, but yet the ghetto neighborhoods are the first ones to ask for more policing. And I see this over in Omaha on a daily basis with the shootings. We need more cops over here to stop this. Well, you got 3 videos to watch if you want to go any further into this. And I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. Or, I shouldn't say enjoy them. I hope it gives you pause to think about exactly what I've already said. The 3 uglies. Mayor de Blasio, Eric Holder, and Obama. They're the ones to blame for this shit, because they didn't take quick and swift action. They just tried to appease the communities that were involved in this shit. So, I'm NT8. These are my views from the porch. And it's like 42 degrees out, so no polar bear challenge ride today. And low's supposed to be 38 tonight, so not tomorrow either. So, enough of that. On with the videos. Later.
In the coming days, I will announce updated Justice Department guidance regarding profiling by federal law enforcement. This will institute rigorous new standards and robust safeguards to help end racial profiling once and for all.
That's Attorney General Eric Holder's bold response to the Michael Brown and Eric Garner cases. But not everyone agrees. With me, Sheriff David Clark of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Good evening, Sheriff. Is Holder right? Do we need to end racial profiling?
No, is he wrong? But he's way out of line. He hasn't produced, Judge, and you know this, he hasn't produced one shred of evidence that law enforcement officers or agencies either systematically, institutionally, or through policy initiatives engage in racist practices. So for him to want to paint this broad brush, or use a broad brush, I should say, and indict every law enforcement officer in America, I reject that. I'm insulted by that. And I'm going to continue to stick up for the men and women who put on the uniform and go out and protect and defend their communities.
You know, Sheriff, the thing that amazes me is that there was no racial profiling here. You've got Michael Brown in the middle of the street, and they're telling him to move along, get out of the middle of the street. You've got Eric Garner, who the local shop owners are saying the guy's selling loosies, which are those loose cigarettes. I mean, where is the racial profiling? Does anyone even know what that means?
No, he won't define it either. He won't define it because he wants to be able to keep a sliding scale and a moving target. He'll move the goalposts every time we're able to reject and with evidence disprove this claim of racial profiling. Look, the Michael Brown and the Garner case are two very different cases, but there is one parallel that winds through both of them, is that we have individuals who would not comply with the law enforcement officers' lawful demands. One of them, or commands I should say, one of them, get out of the street, and the other, put your hands behind your back. I would like to remind people that you have an obligation, whether you think you have to or not, to comply with an officer's lawful demands. Mike Brown gets out of the street, we have a very different outcome. If Garner puts his hand behind his back, we have a very different outcome. So we need to talk about that as well, as why so many of our young black males, and I'm troubled by this, are walking around angry with this chip on their shoulders, and they resent authority. That's really what this is about. It's played out at home with their parents. It's played out in school with the teachers, where they don't accept the authority there, or they reject the authority. And then all of a sudden it gets into the street in a situation where the person that they are going to stand up to, if you will, wrongfully, is going to push back, and that's the American police officer. Because once a police officer makes a decision that somebody's going to jail, somebody's going to jail.
Right, right. And, you know, I want to ask you, Sheriff, about something that is bothering a lot of us, including me. We're going to put up a screen of Eric Garner. Now, I want to know, is this a chokehold or is this a takedown? That's one where the cop's behind him with his arm on his throat. And let's show him the second full screen, and that's with his hand on his head. Would you please tell us, is this a chokehold, a takedown, and why is his hand on his head?
Well, you know, I don't know all the facts of that case, and I'm just looking at a couple of slides, but, you know, these things don't happen in a linear fashion. When you go to get somebody into custody who does not want to be taken into custody, it's all over the place. You end up with body parts, you end up grabbing people in places that you didn't intend to do because they're moving all around. You could see that Mr. Garner there did not want to be taken into custody. He's a large man. You know, you hold things down, I don't know, hand on the shoulder, hand on the head. But when the individual continues to resist arrest, you do what you have to do to get him into custody. I think it's a tragedy that both of these men died. There's no doubt about that. These cops did not enter into this situation wanting to use deadly force.
You know what? We're going to get cut off, Sheriff. Thanks for being with us tonight. Thank you, Sheriff.
It's always my pleasure.
Obama is giving NBA star LeBron James the thumbs up. In a new People magazine interview, the president saying LeBron James did the right thing by wearing an I Can't Breathe t-shirt during a team warm-up. The t-shirt protested the police chokehold death of Eric Garner. So did President Obama do the right thing by commenting on the issue. Joining us, former special assistant to President George W. Bush and Daily Beast columnist Ron Christie. Ron, what do you think about this?
I think it's unpresidential, Greta. I think this is something, given the severity of all the issues this country has to deal with. We have 9 million Americans who are looking for work who can't get a job. We have the lowest workforce participation rate in nearly 30 years. And the president decides to wade in on a social issue that I think is divisive. We want our president to be one who is above controversy. We want our president to be one who is one to find a way to unite Americans. And I think his saying that LeBron did the right thing is a very divisive thing on the eve of the Christmas holidays when so many Americans are torn by the racial strife that the president and seemingly being pulled by his new friend Al Sharpton, pulling the strings to get him to wade in on this, are involved in.
You know, this is what I don't understand. Why is he turning to Al Sharpton? You know, there are two African-American U.S. senators. One's a Republican, one's a Democrat. We got Tim Scott on the Republican side, Cory Booker on the Democratic side, who are incredibly accomplished men who could be great leaders. Why is he turning to them? He could just turn to Cory Booker, who's a Democrat. But instead he goes to Al Sharpton, who's I mean, I keep going back to this tax thing, but, you know, is that people aren't getting refunds because the IRS doesn't have any money, but they let this guy get a pass.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that last night, and I'm glad you mentioned it now, because the fact of the matter is, when I worked at the White House, when I was clearing people to come into the building, if they had an outstanding lien, if they had an outstanding obligation, I had to warn them and say, if you try to enter the building, the Secret Service will arrest you. How is it that Al Sharpton owes over $4 million in back taxes, and he waltzes through, goes into the West Wing, meets with the president? I tell you what, I know Tim Scott, I know Cory Booker. Those are two men of impeccable character. Why isn't the president talking to them?
Why isn't he? I mean, that these two men, I keep putting them up on the screen for people to see because they are so impressive. You know, it's like, you know, they're leaders.
That's exactly right. And I think the president of the United States is supposed to be a leader of all Americans. And it seems to me that he is now the leader of those who are in the race grievance and the hustling industry. And it offends me, Greta. It offends me because the fabric of this country is being pulled apart by these folks who seek to divide us based on race rather than finding common ground in areas to bring us together. I know Senator Cory Booker made the mistake of saying something positive about Bain and Industries in 2012, and I think got iced out by the Obama administration. But he was in Air Force One the other day, so maybe he's back in. But why? I mean, why isn't? You know, I can understand you might not want to use a Republican. Right. But what's wrong with Cory Booker? Well, Cory Booker's a great guy, and then you go back again.
And I say that because I don't think there's anything wrong with him.
Right, but I have to go back to Al Sharpton. If you look at what the head of Sony Pictures did the other day of sitting down with Al Sharpton, as if he speaks for all black people. He speaks for himself, he speaks for a paycheck, and he speaks for a buyout.
I was even embarrassed that she took the bait. I mean, I'm thinking, like, you know how I sort of want the woman to be the smart one. Instead, we have this woman who takes the bait. You know.
Well, I
said that because I'm on the woman team. You know.
Well, I agree with you.
I want her to be a success. I don't want her to look goofy.
Well, no, and I guarantee George Clooney couldn't get a 90-minute sit-down with the head of Sony Pictures. But, of course, if you're in the racial grievance industry and you're trying to get the shakedown cruise, you don't want folks picketing in front of Sony, you're going to do that. I think it's a disgrace. The president had the opportunity to stand up, Greta, and do the right thing and say, we need to stop this. We need to stand up for Americans, not based on color, but based on our common bonds. And he is only putting fuel in the fire.
Let me say one thing, though. I think LeBron James is a good role model.
He's a good role model for a lot of kids, but he's nothing in the model of Muhammad Ali or Arthur Ashe.
And here are the two U.S. senators that we just had up there, Senator Tim Scott and Senator Cory Booker. Senator Cory Booker I used to follow him on Twitter when he was a mayor in Newark because he was running around helping people fix their cars and everything else. I mean, he's a real doer.
Taking people out of buildings that are on fire. Yeah, he's a really good guy.
I know. President Obama, please call Senator Cory Booker. Anyway,
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. Nice to see you.
Good to see you.
And
tonight, Americans, once hopeful that after electing the first African-American president, the issue of race would be a thing of the past, are left with Barack Obama. who stokes the flames of racial hatred, resentment, and divisiveness. A man who, instead of healing our nation and instead of overcoming any racial divide, prefers to take sides based not on facts but on color, to prejudge situations based not on sworn testimony and evidence but on conjecture and a one-size-fits-all resentment, to peddle the narrative of a national problem between law enforcement and young people of color. Now, every young American who loses his life should be the concern of the man in the White House. But why is it that we only hear from him when death involves a person of color?
When Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. The Justice Department has opened an independent federal civil rights investigation into the death of Michael Brown. The Attorney General himself will be traveling to Ferguson.
But James Foley, an American who never committed a crime and was beheaded, is nothing more than a blip in the president's golf game. Mr. President, why do you send White House officials to Brown's funeral, but no one to James Foley's memorial service? I don't remember you injecting yourself in the death of a young white American or sending the Attorney General on a local crime before the justice system can act, as you did with Eric Holder, sending him to Ferguson. Why not speak about young African Americans killed by other African Americans? Black on black crime, the kind of crime for which your hometown of Chicago is so infamous. Instead, you see racism everywhere.
I think Ferguson laid bare a problem, and that is a simmering distrust that exists between too many police departments and too many communities of color.
Mr. President, you say we need trust between police and the African American community. Police need to be sensitive to minority concerns. Well, how about you teach respect for those who put their lives on the line every day, for those who protect us, for those who are the one line of defense against an otherwise barbaric and chaotic society? How about you teach that when a police officer says move along or put your hands behind your back, you do it? And teach that you don't call cops derogatory names or reach into a police cruiser to grab a cop's gun. But then again, you're the one who thinks cops are stupid.
I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry. Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly in arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home. And number three, there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately.
Mr. President, you demand respect. Why not demand respect for police when they issue an order? It's not a suggestion, an invitation, a mediation, or a request. As anarchy reigned and protesters looted stores and burned buildings of hardworking Americans, many African American, where were you? Or do you believe that those crimes are justification for a perceived injustice? Simple collateral damage, like Occupy Wall Street, that tax-paying Americans just need to suffer through and then pay for. But no, you fan the flames of resentment, trumpeting your own investigation that you could have completed by now, only prolonging the anger, suggesting, yes, folks, this is yet another white injustice, and I'm going to reverse it with a federal civil rights investigation, when you know there isn't a smidgen, your word, of evidence to claim or to support the claim of that. Weren't you going to reverse the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case with a federal investigation? What happened to that one? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Have you no respect for the law and for our system of justice? If you don't like the law, change it. Hell, you do it all the time without Congress. And you bring in the greatest charlatan of them all, a man who makes a living inciting racial hatred, a tax cheat, a liar, who claimed that an African-American girl was raped by a white man, stirring the pot of racial hatred that resulted in a defamation judgment against him. to sit with you at the citadel of power in the White House to discuss how law enforcement needs to be more sensitive. Now, there are times when injustices occur. I know, but I also know that the system works. According to that same Al Sharpton, as district attorney, I convicted the first white cop of shooting an African American in the history of the state of New York. That jury, not affected by centuries of racism, but by the facts, pure and simple. Mr. President, if you're so concerned about racism, why don't you do something about it? It's no secret that black crime is disproportionately high. Why not focus on poverty, on lack of education, on drugs, on guns, and on broken families? Bill Clinton moved Americans from welfare to workfare. You turned back the hands of time. With you as president, things aren't so great for African Americans. The poverty rate among African Americans has gone up since you took office. Fewer African Americans own homes. The number of African Americans on food stamps rose from 6 million to almost 11 million since you took office. Mr. President, you seem to forget. You weren't just elected by one group. You were elected by all of us, Republicans and Democrats, blacks and whites. Why don't you act like you're the president of all of us? And that's my open.
Get my point? Pretty much. But if you were interested, you sat through 20 some minutes of video. What a fucking joke. I can't express how much of a joke it is. So you got 3 civil rights cases going on. And no answers. No judgments. Nothing. And there won't be. So, thanks for watching. Just wanted to let you know that. And we'll talk to you later.